America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back into the Doctor's Lounge. I'm your host, Dr. Hal. I come to you each week, alternating with my co-host, Dr. Scott, talking about the things that doctors talk about in doctors' lounges all over the country. We try to inform you about issues pertaining to healthcare and your family and give you information that you need so that you can advocate for yourself and for your family. We are sponsored by the Docs for Patient Care Foundation, which is the only physician-led think tank in the country. We stand for physician-doctor or the patient-physician relationship and for healthcare freedom for all Americans, something that we're going to talk about a little bit more today. So please support the Docs for Patient Care Foundation at www.d4, the number 4, pcfoundation.org. That's d4pcfoundation.org. And please contribute so that we can continue to advocate for you and to be your voice in Washington, locally, and on the airwaves so that people will hear what you need, what's important to you as a patient, so that they will hopefully take things into consideration. And with that, I need to start off by telling everyone how frustrated I am at this point, but everybody is frustrated by what's going on in our political world. And I, again, hate to talk about things that veer too far off the healthcare theme of this show, but I am compelled to do that because what we are right now confronting is probably the most important issue that I can even think of, and that is the future of our country. And it's not hyperbole. It really is the future of our country. And in many ways, it's the future of the world, because what happens in Washington, the policies that are created by our leaders affect every single person in the world, positively or negatively. We're 2 weeks away from this, what I would say, and this is always what you hear people saying every single election, right? That, oh, this is the most important election in U.S. history. But I have to say that this Georgia runoff, is actually living up to that billing. It is really the most important political race that I have ever seen in my lifetime. And I say that because the direction of this country hinges on whether or not the Republicans get to retain control of the Senate. If they lose the Senate, if they lose to the two leftist radical candidates that are going to embrace the left agenda, there is no stopping the Democrats, the forces of evil. And I say the forces of evil because they are evil. What the left wants to do is to restrict every single American's liberty. They want to control what you listen to on TV and on the radio. They want to control what you drive. They want to control your health care. They want to control every aspect of your life. They want to get rid of the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, ability to have arms, the Fifth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. They want to just gut the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. They are trying to burn down democracy. That's what the left is trying to do. and that is evil. They want to restrict liberty because to them, power is the currency. They want to control power. And we see what happens when these individuals control power. We see it every single day now with this COVID shutdown. This is a taste. This is just the appetizer of what every single American is in store for if they gain the Senate. What's happening right here in Georgia is it compares to the first vote in this country of the Continental Congress deciding whether or not they wanted to embrace a new form of government to give the people the power. It can be compared to the election of 1860 when the country was facing one of the largest, one of the most substantial crises in the history of the nation at that time. This is what this election in Georgia compares to, because this is what is going to determine where our country goes. If the left wins, America is no longer going to be America, and people need to wake up to that fact. The Democrats will have unchecked control of all levers of government, and I'm appealing on this show today to every voter in Georgia to get out and vote, but that's not enough. You've got to talk to your family. You've got to talk to your neighbors. You've got to tell them what is at stake, because I don't think that people truly realize what's at stake. They think, oh, Democrats win, it'll be another cycle, and then we'll get back to, it'll come back to the middle, and everything will be, as it has always been. That is not going to happen. This is going to be an irreversible process where these people are going to admit 2 more states to the Union so that they can have further control of the Senate. That would be Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia, seriously, having the same representation as New York or California in the Senate? Are you kidding me? These are the same people who want to pack the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has no number attached to it. Most people don't know that. There's no set number, but there's precedent. Well, if the leftists are in control, they will overwhelm the Supreme Court. They'll have 5 more justices on the Supreme Court, and they will be able to legislate from the bench, and anything that the left Congress and the left president decides to pass that is going to be challenged will be upheld by these additional leftist Supreme Court justices. The list goes on and on what this Georgia vote, what the connotations of this Georgia vote are. Now, I understand that there are a lot of people in Georgia who are disgusted by the way that the presidential election went, with cheating, with there are 50% of the population, the bucket of deplorables, and I'm in that bucket of deplorables, so I proudly wear that moniker. But half the electorate believes that this was a tainted election. And there are people who are running around who are so angry that they are irrational, and they're telling Georgians to stay home and not vote, to punish the Republicans because they were feckless. They did a very bad job. Our Secretary of State in Georgia has been duped by Stacey Abrams and her mob. They are afraid of her. They're afraid of her mouthpiece. They're afraid of what power they think she holds. It's ridiculous to be afraid, to not have a spine and stand up to these forces of evil. And yet our Republican elected officials in Georgia refuse. They fail to do that. They've been duped. And so I understand why there are people in Georgia who are angry and want to teach these people a lesson. This is not the place to teach them a lesson. This is not the time to teach them a lesson. And the reason is because the repercussions are just so unthinkable that they will rue the day that they made that decision, probably for the rest of their lives. So I'm appealing to every Georgian to vote, every Republican Georgian, every Libertarian Georgian. And yes, I am including the Libertarians in this because they are more aligned with the Republicans than they are with the left, with the leftist Democrats, with the socialists. And if every Republican and Libertarian shows up and votes, that's the only way to turn back the cheating that's going on in Georgia. And there's going to be cheating. There is no doubt in my mind that these people are going to try to repeat what they did before. And God help us, I hope that there are measures that are in place to minimize that. But the only way to overcome this is to show up and vote. And anybody around the country who is listening to this and who has a friend or family member in Georgia, you've got to urge them to get out and vote. That's the only way that we can save our republic. This is a turnout election. I understand the people who are wanting to stay home in protest think, well, I'm going to just go ahead and launch my silent protest. I'm going to stay home, and I'm going to show them. But you're not hurting yourself. You are hurting the country. You are hurting the world. Your one vote, you, the Georgia Republicans, the Georgia Libertarians, represent 128 Americans who are counting on you. 128 American votes are controlled by every Georgian Republican and Libertarian. And the future of our country, the hopes, the dreams, the desires of every American is resting on your shoulders. Your vote is the most important thing to these people around the country. And this is, make no mistake about it, this is the Super Bowl of politics right now in Georgia. I'm living this. I'm so sick of TV commercials right now. It's like it is so oppressive. The money pouring into Georgia, and people on both sides thinking that these commercials are going to influence anybody's vote. The minds are made up. Everybody knows how they're going to vote. It's just a matter of turning out. And everybody from around the country is pouring into Georgia. I was at an event, an event last night, which was held by the Club for Growth, and there's two buses that are going around Georgia that have been put together by the Job Creators Network, which is what you've heard me talking about on this show, and probably Dr. Scott as well. And one is a healthcare bus, one is a business bus. And there's so many groups that have come into Georgia trying to bring people in from all over the country. Yesterday, I went to this event, and they had former Secretary Tom Price, who's a Georgian, former Georgia congressman, and former HHS secretary, who spoke a bit about health care. They brought in Colonel Allen West. They brought in Senator-elect Tommy Tuberville from Alabama, and a number of other politicians to try to exhort people to get out and vote. And what really just was I was left with is that these rallies are really, they're preaching to the choir at these rallies. All these people who come to these rallies are going to vote. They're the people who are the true believers. These are not the people to reach. You've got to reach the people who are the angry, disenfranchised Republicans who are frustrated and who are just thinking that not coming out isn't worth, or staying at home is a reasonable alternative, that going to the polls is not worth their time. And those are the people that really need to be reached. I'm going to give a shout out to an old friend that I connected with who said he was going to listen to this show today, Peter Corman. Thank you, Peter, for reconnecting with me last night. Peter is involved in Georgia politics, and we had an incredible conversation about what has transpired here in Georgia, and how this is just an unforeseen situation that nobody could have anticipated where we're at right now. But let me just set up for everybody the importance of what this election means, not just to Americans, but to the world. All the cabinet appointees require Senate confirmation. Treaties like the Iran deal or the Paris Climate Accord or TPP require ratification in the Senate. Every economic law involving taxation has to be passed. It has to originate in the House, but it has to be passed in the Senate. This is the firewall for democracy. This is the firewall for freedom in this country. And Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue need to be returned to Washington. This is the Maginot Line. This is it. This is where the rubber meets the road. And I want to appeal to all the Georgians out there who are patriots, because this is patriotic. If you don't show up, you are basically a turncoat. You would be the person in 1776 who would be a British collaborator. You are not worthy of being an American if you don't turn out and vote on January 5th or before. If you give up that right, the right that millions of our forefathers fought for to preserve this country so that you can vote, and if you give up that right and throw away our country, then you don't deserve to be an American, and you deserve to get the government that these leftists want to shove down your throat. I want to bring this around to what we are seeing right now in this country with COVID. There's no one really talking about what I'm about to tell you. If you look around and you see what the tyranny of these governors and mayors are around the country, how they're handling the COVID epidemic. They are doing. They are enacting policies that are not based in law, not based in science, not based in fact, but based on feeling, based on what they think is the right thing to do. And what they think is the right thing to do is often wrong, because they are not the smartest people who are in our society. These politicians, far from it. They are often not the smartest people. You know, you go to college today, and you get a degree in liberal arts, and you come out with no knowledge at all. You are probably the dumbest educated person in the history of our country. And all you're able to do, all you're qualified to do when you graduate from college these days with a degree in liberal arts is become a barista at Starbucks or become a politician. And these politicians are the dumbest people because they don't know how to analyze facts, and especially with COVID. You know, COVID is a virus. It is a medical condition. And yet we've got people in politics who are creating policies that make absolutely no scientific sense. You can have a ban on a restaurant where you can't serve in a restaurant in Staten Island, but 1 block away, across the orange zone in the green zone, you can have a restaurant. Does the virus really know geography? Is the virus able to know that 1 block away you have it's safe to eat inside, but on the other side of that line it's not? You have people in government who are saying that you have to stay home after 10 o'clock. You can't be in a bar or a restaurant. Is the virus that smart? Do they wear watches? Do they know time? So it's safe to be in the restaurant at 9:58, but at 10:05 it's not? Are you kidding me? Are these people even they're irrational. It makes zero sense. And I'm not even going to get into the masking debate, because that is really something that is emotional, and you have a lot of people who fall on either side of that argument. But what we're talking about is a liberty discussion, the ability to keep your businesses open, to make a living, to be able to put food on your children's table, on the table for your children and your spouse to eat. You know, these politicians who say that restaurants or businesses have to close, they're still getting a paycheck every day. They don't care. For them, this is not an issue. But for the majority of Americans, this is life and death, and this is real. This is government tyranny. This is what happens when you have government controlling people's lives. They can destroy people's lives with a simple policy decision, with a stroke of the pen, not even voted on, but one person deciding that they're going to restrict activities. And there's a long list of governors who fall into this category. In California, in Illinois, in New York, in New Jersey. The list goes on and on and on. These are people who, when they are given absolute power, are exercising that power over you, the individual. This is the government at its worst. This is what happens when you have totalitarian regimes where the leaders are telling the people what they need to do, and they live by a different standard. They don't apply the rules to themselves. And we see this every single day. Another story surfaces about Gavin Newsom, who is eating at the number one Michelin 3-star restaurant in the United States in Napa Valley, ordering $170 truffle dish on the side, and sitting in a small room with 12 individuals without masks and drinking wine, when he's telling businesses in California that they can't be open to serve to their customers, even though they've got tables that are 6 feet apart with plexiglass. You've got people who are getting their hair done and getting caught and being apologetic, and they're non-apologetic about it. You've got people even walking the halls of Congress who, when they get in front of the camera, are telling everybody to wear a mask, and when they walk around Congress, they don't have masks on. So this is unfortunately what we see in governments where the elite control everything and they feel entitled, they feel all powerful. The little people can be happy with the crumbs that they dish out, while these individuals are living high on the hog. They are exempt from the rules. They're able to live a life that is suitable for a monarch. Americans should be waking up to this fact, and I think that they are. We're seeing Americans now starting to resist, to protest the shutting down of their businesses, and they are slowly getting to the point where they're going to there's going to be civil unrest over this. And so, are these the people that we want to give absolute power to over your health care? What do you think will happen when these people control your health care? The right to work in this country is a basic right, and you've got these people taking that right away from you. What do you think is going to happen to your health care if these people control it? And forget about what they're telling you about wanting to help everybody and give everybody more health care. That is a big, fat, heaping pile of you-know-what. They want to control your health care just like they're controlling your ability to work. And I'm talking to you too now, Democrats. Are these the people that you want to see running your health care system? We'll be back in the next segment, and I'm going to expand on the health care angle of this as we return to the Doctor's Lounge.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
I'm your host, Dr. Hal. Every week we come to you with the information that you need so that you will be prepared to advocate for your family and for yourselves when it comes to your health care. God forbid we get Ossoff and Warnock in the Senate and the left gets what they want, which is a majority in Congress and the White House. First of all, health care will be more expensive. There initially will be a public option. The government will run it. They will be initially very inexpensive, and it will drive commercial payers out of the healthcare market. Then the choices will disappear. The only insurer out there will be the federal government, and that's when we get a single payer.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening. You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
We're back in the Doctor's Lounge. I'm Dr. Hal. I am talking to you today about Georgia, about the future of our country, the Senate race for control of the Senate. And I left in the last segment talking about what's going to happen if Reverend Warnock, if John Ossoff, the two leftist radical Democratic candidates, win their race, what will happen to your health care? And I hope that the Democrats are paying attention to this, because this is going to affect you too, just like it's affecting Democrat restaurant owners, Democrat gym owners, Democrat hairdressers. It's going to affect every single person when it comes to your health care, because the Democrats are going to behave exactly the same way that they're behaving right now with the COVID pandemic. They are going to exercise power over you, the individual, and when you have no choice, when the government controls health care, you have no choice. You're going to be stuck. Right now you have choices. Thank God most people don't have to rely on the government for health care. A large percentage do, those on Medicare, those on Medicaid, those in the VA system. But for those who get employer-based insurance or they're purchasing their own insurance, thank God we don't have politicians telling you that you can't have a certain operation or you can't have a certain medication. But that's coming. That is coming if you elect these people, because they are going to do everything that they can to control your health care. Now, let me spell this out for you. The Democrats don't care about people, especially those in the middle class. And as Rush Limbaugh likes to say, do not doubt me on this. They don't care about any individuals. They try to tell you that they do, that they are so compassionate, that they want health care for everybody. But that is the smokescreen. Don't you see? This is the lies that they're trying to tell people so that they'll shake their heads in agreement and say, yeah, we want health care for everybody. You need to judge these people by their actions, not by their words. Haven't we learned about this from previous progressive politicians in our country, that what they do is far different from what they say? So let's talk about what happens if the Democrats take control of the Senate. It's really very predictable. You don't have to guess. It's not speculation, because they've told us what they want to do. There's basically two ways that the Democrats are going to go, and they both end up the same place. Biden wants to supercharge Obamacare. He thought that was the greatest law ever passed in the history of our country. Of course, he is demented, but that is another story. We all know how Obamacare worked out. If you were poor, you received subsidies to pay for health care. Now, that health care may not have been the greatest health care because you had restricted choices, you had restricted access, you had restricted doctors, you had restrictions on many things. All that did was it gave you a card that said you're covered, but it didn't necessarily give you the access that somebody who has insurance that they pay for is able to get in the healthcare system. But if you earned more than $96,000 a year, you paid a steep price. The average family of 4 under Obamacare saw their premiums go up 100%, and deductibles and copays went through the roof. So it's not uncommon for a family of 4 to pay as much as $40,000 out of pocket annually before the insurance kicked in a nickel. So that was Obamacare. That was the legacy of Obamacare. But what do the Democrats glom onto? 2 things, right? 2 things. Number 1, coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. And number 2, keeping children on your health care until 26 years of age. Those are the only 2 aspects of Obamacare that they can show any kind of popular support for, and that's what they just glom onto. That's what they advertise on a regular basis. How Kelly Loeffler wants to take away your insurance in a pandemic, people who have pre-existing conditions. You hear these ads that are just such nonsense, such lies. These are the only 2 things that came out of Obamacare, and they want to double down, triple down on Obamacare, supercharge it. How are they going to do that? Well, they want to go ahead and create a public option. The insurance companies are evil and the premiums are too high. We are going to create a public option, the government-run insurance program for people who are unable to afford the expensive insurance that's out there. We'll give them another option. We'll go ahead and set up a government-run insurance program. Well, that sounds great, except that is a Trojan horse. That's a smokescreen. And what does that mean? It means that when you have the government competing against private industry always loses. You can't compete against the government because they print money, and they can lower the price to a point where private businesses could not compete, and they're going to leave the market. And how do we know that this is what's going to happen? We've seen it happen in other places around the world. We've seen it happen in China. China controls over 90% of the pharmaceuticals in the world. And they control it because they control the rare elements that go into drugs, and they control the world's supply of acetaminophen, that's Tylenol, and salicylic acid, that's aspirin. They control the world's supply. And how did they get to control the world's supply? By lowering the price, because it's government-run business. And they lowered it low enough that every competitor who is dealing with this in the world could no longer compete and went out of business, leaving China with this book of business where they are the market. Well, that's what's going to happen in America in healthcare when the government has an insurance company. They're going to drive out the competition, and it's going to disappear. And what will we be left with? We'll be left with one insurance company, the federal government. Everybody in this country is going to be dependent on the federal government for their insurance. And then you've got people who are in power, just like the governor of New York or the governor of California, who will make policies that will affect every single American, whether they are based in fact, scientific fact, or economic fact. It will be whatever they choose to do. And you're not going to have any choices. The more radical faction of the leftist Democrat Socialist Party wants to see Medicare for all instantaneously. They don't want to go through the process of the Trojan horse. They just want to come marching in with their army and take over healthcare and get to that point in one gigantic move. And at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. We have a government-run healthcare system and very little choice. Now, I've spoken to so many Georgia doctors about this in the last few weeks, and I am so just frustrated by the, I don't want to say stupidity, but the willful ignorance of these doctors who say, "Oh, that's not going to happen. You can't tell me that the healthcare system is going to disappear and go away. There'll always be choices. Look at England." Well, I am looking at England, and for the majority of people in the middle class or below, they've got very, very poor options, and they are reliant on the government health care. These doctors that I'm talking to may be thinking about themselves or their family, and they'll have options, but that's not necessarily true either. Look at Canada. For decades, up until just recently, Canadians had zero choice. They couldn't go to a private doctor in Canada because it didn't exist. If they wanted health care, they had to cross the border and come into the United States, and that happened on a regular basis over the decades, where a large number of Canadians relied on American doctors. 75% of Canada is within, I think, 100 miles of the American border. And so many Canadians felt the necessity to make the trip across the border to get proper health care because they could not depend on the health care that their country was shoving down their throat. Even the Prime Minister of Newfoundland, Danny Williams, came to Florida to get a heart procedure done because he could not rely on the Canadian healthcare system. So the leftists who are hoping to institute a socialist healthcare system in the United States, they are going to try to take over healthcare and limit options to Americans, just at a time when the Trump administration took away so many of the restrictions that Obamacare placed on individuals where they couldn't get the health care that they needed. And President Trump eliminated so many of those barriers, giving people the ability to go out and get a short-term health care plan that fits their needs instead of the needs of the insurance industry, or allowed groups of people who are in similar jobs to come together to form a mini guild and purchase insurance at lower rates. All of these things are measures that are intended to increase liberty, to increase the ability of Americans to do what they feel is best for them. The leftists want just the opposite. They want to tell you what's best for you and not rely on you making those decisions for yourself. We see that every day again with COVID, where they think that that they are going to know better how to control a pandemic than you are to take responsibility for yourself and for your family. Now, there is in terms of what we have to look forward to in a leftist controlled government, I can tell you that in healthcare, it is not easy. This is probably one of the most complicated issues that we face as Americans, because healthcare is always the centerpiece of the elections since 2008. Whether or not people want to acknowledge that or not, it always has been. And how we handle healthcare is, I think, one of the prime issues that politicians have to deal with. And even well-meaning politicians. Right now, we don't have single government, single party-controlled government. We've got a Republican Senate. We've got a Democratic House. They're trying to get a bill across the finish line before the end of this congressional session, which is called the No Surprises Act. And this bill is intended to put an end to surprise medical billing. I've talked about this on the show a number of times, and I don't have the time to really get into this again today, but just to put this in a couple of sentences, when people go to the hospital and they get care, they think that if the hospital is under their insurance, they will be covered by any doctor who gives them care in the hospital. And that really is not true anymore, because the insurance companies have played games with the doctors and kicked many of them off their panels, and now they're considered out-of-network doctors. And so when these people wind up in hospitals, they get a bill from the treating physician. This happened to my wife just a couple of months ago. She had to go to the emergency room. I'm not going to name the hospital yet, depending on how they treat me. But she had to go to the hospital because she was ill. We were afraid that it might be COVID. She went to the emergency room, and make a long story short, she did not. But she got a bill. We got a bill for the emergency room physician who spent 2 minutes with her, but was out of network. How do you have an out of network emergency room doctor in a hospital? And that and people can empathize with that. I think that gets people emotional, and they want to see an end to that. And so we've got Congress trying to come up with a solution. But even a well-meaning Congress that is not trying to ram down something through down people's throats, where there's not single party rule, but there is compromise, they're not able to get it right. They're trying to put in provisions into this law that are heavy-handed and that sound great on the surface, taking steps towards eliminating these these practices. But what in reality is happening is we're marching one step closer to socialized medicine, because this law is creating more federal government oversight over healthcare. And it is allowing insurance companies to win because they have the most money, the biggest, the most lobbyists influencing these politicians. And so much of what they want to see happen in this bill has been written into this law. And if anybody wants to read about this, they need to go and look at. I'm just trying to see what the number of the bill is. I can't find the number of the bill, but it is the No Surprises Act. You can go online, you can read about it, you can see how this law will actually restrict your ability to have the kind of care that you need to have, and you need to call your congressmen and your senators to oppose this act. It should not be rushed through Congress before Christmas. It will reduce patient access to independent physicians who work for the patients and not for the benefit of the insurance companies. And we on this show, we constantly try to bring to you this kind of information. We try to analyze what is happening behind the scenes in Washington. It's a mess. Healthcare is complicated, and the politicians are conflicted because of their relationships with the special interests that are raping the healthcare system and making so much money that they want to see the status quo maintained. And even if we get to socialized medicine, these special interests will, I am certain, be taken care of, whether we're talking about the pharmaceutical industry, who despicably hid information about the vaccination for COVID when they knew that they had a winner, but withheld it before the election so that Trump would not look good and get credit. Everybody in the media said that he's a liar, that they couldn't get a vaccine to the American public before the end of the year, that he was just trying to make himself look good. And he delivered on what he said he was going to deliver on. But the pharmaceutical company, the pharmaceutical industry hates him because he was going to take them down a few pegs and make them accountable so that Americans weren't being charged the highest drug rates in the world, subsidizing the rest of the world's drug costs. They didn't want Trump as president because of that. The insurance industry will make out in socialized healthcare as well because they've got the infrastructure to manage 320 million Americans. The federal government does not. So they will contract out with insurance companies, I'm sure, so that they can be third-party administrators to the federal government insurance program. The insurance companies didn't want to see Trump as president either, because Trump was trying to take the insurance companies down a few pegs and give Americans more freedom, give them the ability to get what insurance they wanted to get, not what the insurance companies wanted to make Americans pay for and what politicians were mandating Americans to buy. So healthcare is a very complicated business. At the end of the day, healthcare should be an individual decision between a patient and their doctor, not a politician, not a bureaucrat. It should be something that individuals, patients, are responsible for, just like the decision whether or not they want to stay home during the COVID pandemic or whether or not they want to eat in a restaurant. These are individual American decisions. This is what made America America. This is an experiment in human freedom. And if we want to see this disappear, Ronald Reagan is probably the smartest president that we've ever had in our lives. And he said two things that always stick with me. He said that the 9 most frightening words that somebody can hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." And the other thing that he said that always stuck with me is that we are just one generation away from losing our country forever. And I'm afraid that he is right. I'm afraid that we are right now at that crossroads here in Georgia. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is everything. This is the Gettysburg. This is the Bunker Hill. This is this is the where the Spartans meet the Persians. This is it, and this is where patriots need to stand up and vote and say to the powers on the left that want to destroy our country that this is where we're going to take our stand. And we will not allow you to take over our country, to destroy this experiment in human freedom that has been the best government in the history of the planet, in the history of the world. And those people who want to see this go away should just go ahead and leave America if they don't like our country, because people have fought and died for this country. People are proud to be Americans, and if you're not proud to be an American, you don't belong here. And this is where people need to take a stand, because the left is pure evil, and they do not care for individuals. They want power, control, and they want fidelity of every person who is living here to their way of thinking. And people need to stand up and just say no. I think we are at the end of this show. I've given my rant. I've ranted more in the past few months than I think I have in almost 6 years of this show. So I apologize to those who like to listen to this show and who I may have offended, but I'm unapologetic about the positions that I've taken, and I feel like from a healthcare provider standpoint, it couldn't be more clear to me the danger that we face losing our freedom with regard to our health care. So please, one more time, Georgians, Republicans, Libertarians, get out and vote, and get your friends and family to vote as well. See you next time. Thank you for being with us.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Hey guys, it's Minister Frankie with Shine His Light Ministries. It's getting cold outside and winter is coming. It's time to shine a little light